Take a combo-based beat 'em up, drape it over a typical roguelike structure, and decorate it with magical martial arts, and you'll have Wizard of Legend. Like most roguelikes, the narrative is light. Your character begins as a tourist at the museum for the Wizard of Legend. Magical forces draw you to the past, where you undergo the Chaos Trials. As you may have guessed, victory proves that you were actually the famous Wizard of Legend the whole time. These trials consist of 3 boss fights, each with 2 preceding levels and their own mini-bosses, before confronting the 4th and final boss. At your disposal is an impressive variety of elemental spells, which range from traditional fireballs and lightning bolts to the more exotic, such as arcane harpoons and blustery pile drivers. The player can equip up to 6 different spells to combo together. The combos are the backbone of the best part of Wizard of Legend, which is the combat. The player has to manage cooldowns and effects of each of their spells to find ideal combos for maximum damage. The elemental theme also adds a great deal of visual impact as flames, ice, rock, lightning swirls and flies all over the place. Mastering these huge flashy combos is the most satisfying part of Wizard of Legend. There are hundreds of permutations of spells to choose from. It can be intimidating at first, but dedicated players will have no end of unique combos to experiment with. The combat does have some hiccups, however. Standard enemies are surprisingly durable, especially early in the game. So despite all these flashy combos, these different spells and explosions and whatever, the sometimes the enemies will still be alive, and you have to kind of meekly slap them around with your basic spells because everything else on cooldown, your combo's over, and you're just get out of here. You're just hitting them with your little basic spell, like another 4, 5, 6 times, whatever. Depends, of course, on which basic spell you take. The enemies briefly telegraph their attacks, but that's really vital information which is frequently hidden because all those fancy spell visuals I was just referring to. You'll have huge fireballs and explosions, and the enemy they attack very quickly. They'll very briefly telegraph the attack. Good chance you don't see it, and then you get stabbed. And you suffer a painfully long hit stun when you are struck. So all that adds up to the player taking an unexpected hit, and then you're defenseless as you suffer more follow-up attacks that trigger more hit stuns, and you have a massive amount of damage, and the player has no options. You have very few defensive maneuvers. There are a few spells with defensive functions, but for the most part, the majority of spells are offensive, and you don't have like an inherent dodge. You do have a dash spell slot, but the dash itself isn't defensive. There are some defensive dashes, but the dash itself is not necessarily a defensive maneuver. You have no innate way to defend yourself. In a great game, it should be almost as much fun to lose as it is to win, but Wizard of Legend just too frequently crosses a line to being frustrating when you are on the receiving end of damage. The 3 bosses are initially a delightful challenge, but they're always the same 3 characters. They appear in a random order, which does slightly impact the fight. The later you fight them in that tripart order, the faster they are. They get a couple additional attacks, but it's not a huge change to the fight. It just gets slightly harder, and the key strategy for the most part is dash around as quickly as possible so they don't hit you. Then once they're vulnerable, they'll do a series of attacks, and then they'll be vulnerable for a second. Well, they'll stop, and then you go in there and drop a combo on them. Wizard of Legend handles progression very well. Gems collected from fallen enemies can be spent to unlock magical robes, starting spells, and starting relics for you to choose from. Very generously, and kind of unusual for the genre is that almost all of those relics and spells can be collected during the run, whether you've unlocked them as starting options or not. And then upgrade versions of spells can be brought from shops in run, and those have additional or upgraded effects they have to consider, which is further expands the number of possible spell combinations. So many spell combinations. It's actually pretty cool at the number of different combos you can come up with and how exactly what your strategy work out with how you're dropping or just how you want it to look. Unfortunately, Wizard of Legend suffers the same pitfall that plagues a lot of roguelikes, and that's that the relics are commonly just passive stat upgrades. They don't do anything exciting. It's just, hey, this does more. Now you do more air damage. Congratulations. That even extends to the cursed relics, which give you a larger benefit in exchange for some sort of drawback. It's not a fatal problem, but I really appreciate it when relics are a little more exciting, take a little bit more chances. Passive stat upgrades do have a place. Like they're almost expected, at least to have them in there, but I mean, you need to have something more than that. You'd be like, I want this. This is going to do some crazy effect, and I want to build my whole run about this relic that I find. Really curiously, the number of relics that can be carried is limited. It's kind of odd because there aren't specific categories or slots that would require a limited number of relics. And it's also kind of a high limit, so I only ran into it a couple times when I had a pretty productive strong run that was collecting lots of relics. So it seems like a little bit of an arbitrary choice that only curtails your more powerful, more fun runs. And speaking of curious choices, the map generator, there's so many dead ends. There aren't any goodies or anything. They're just, why are they there? Wizard Legend runs aren't particularly long, but it's a frustrating waste of time to backtrack to an unexplored hallway only to find a brick wall. I thought it may indicate secret rooms, common roguelike staple. You have somewhere where something should be. Maybe it's a secret room, but despite my diligence of hitting all the walls with whatever I could, I only ever found disappointment. The map is also chock full of pitfalls, just pits. Mercifully, you can't just walk into them. If you walk towards the edge, you will stop. But abilities and enemy knockbacks can send you down, or you take damage and you respawn back on solid ground. But it's really annoying to lose a combo and take some silly damage that's also difficult to heal. There's not a ton of healing in the game because you did your crazy combo, but you're a little too close to the edge and you just fell off. Especially when you're trying to run quickly through a level, and if you mistime the dash, you fall down, take damage, and especially all these pitfalls conflicts with another choice regarding the map is that if you run for a few seconds without using any abilities, you get a speed boost, but you rarely get to really enjoy that for long because you're constantly dashing. There's seriously so many pitfalls. You're dashing all the time. In most of them, there are a couple of rooms where the pits are really a big part of the combat. You're trying to knock enemies into the pits. They are on islands you have to dash to without getting hit. So some of the rooms, the pits are, they're fine. They belong. It's not a problem. It's great, whatever. But they're just no, they're hallways. They're just littered with these things. You're constantly dashing, and it's such an inconvenience. I don't, why are they? Just cut them down. Just get rid of them. A local cooperative mode is available, and I do praise the inclusion of the couch co-op. The game doesn't really change at all for another player. It doesn't. The game doesn't modify and become a two-player game. It's just the same game, but now there's another person there. So not my favorite way of doing multiplayer. You should really build the mode around it because you get the same loot as you would in solo. You have to try to split it and share it. Those flashy spell effects, the problem with obscuring stuff. Now you just have twice as many spells flying around. Perspective is perfect for your solo play, but you get another person in there, and it's really claustrophobic. And the camera, if you split up a little bit, you have no room to split up, and the camera doesn't give you much vision anyway for that. You do get a ghost, I guess. I mean, it's not. It doesn't affect the gameplay. My favorite part of the cooperative mode is the one of you dies, you have a little ghost. You make emojis. You fly around and have little emojis as you harass your partner while you wait to be revived. And if your partner plays well enough, he gets these little orbs, and then that can revive the other player, or you should revive the next level. Or if you buy a potion, I bought a potion that healed. I didn't get into the nitty gritty of the functions of the revival mechanic. So there's Wizard of Legends, the debut project of the two-man studio Contingent 99, and considering that, it's incredibly impressive. I would recommend it, worth a play. It's at its best when you're just dashing in between enemies in combat, unleashing these crazy combos that you mastered for a whole bunch of damage. Maybe have some relics in there to do even more damage. These big numbers pop up, and it's all very pretty and fun and exciting. But there's a handful of frustrations. Enemy variety is really, really poor, and there's kind of a weak replayability, in particular because there's only those three bosses, and then your fourth final boss. Then that's it. That's it. It doesn't change enough, which makes Wizard Legend just a little short of like roguelike greatness. Because if those problems weren't there, and you just had this exciting combo-based, fast-paced, beat 'em up action gameplay with the magic, it would be fantastic. Just a little shy of greatness. But I am excited to see what Contingent 99 has to offer in the future. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.